Listening is the gateway to understanding. When we truly hear, we begin to learn. Too many of us pass through life hearing sounds, but never really listening. We hear the noise of the world, the voices of people, the rhythm of daily routine, but our hearts and minds remain untouched. True listening is not simply letting words pass through our ears. It is opening the door of the mind and allowing meaning to enter. It is more than sound, it is connection. It is understanding. It is growth. Think about it. A child learns language not by reading books first, but by listening. Long before a child speaks, he hears the voice of his mother, the laughter of his father, the rhythm of life around him. His little heart and mind are being shaped by sounds that carry meaning, by voices that carry love, correction, and direction. Listening comes before speaking, and without it, there can be no real communication. So it is with us as learners, as seekers, as people trying to improve. If we fail to listen, we fail to grow. But listening is not easy. It takes discipline. It takes humility. To listen means we must quiet our own voice long enough to hear another. To listen means we must push aside distractions, silence the noise of doubt, and give our attention to what matters most. In a world where everyone is rushing to speak, to argue, to make their point, the art of listening has been forgotten. Yet it is in listening that wisdom is found. When you listen, you give value to the speaker. You say with your silence, your words matter, your story matters, you matter. That act of attention is powerful. And in return, the words begin to shape you. The lesson begins to sink in. You begin to understand, not just with your head, but with your heart. Many people can repeat words, but few can live them. The difference lies in whether they truly listened. Now let's bring this closer. When you listen to a story in English, you are not only learning a language. You are learning culture, emotion, rhythm, and meaning. You are hearing how words rise and fall, how sentences breathe, how emotions are carried by sound. And if you only hear the words without listening to their heart, you miss the lesson. But if you lean in, if you let the story wash over you, if you hear the laughter, the sorrow, the tension, the joy, then you are not just learning English. You are learning life. Think about a story like A Night Out at Maxim's. If you just read the words silently, you will catch the surface. But when you listen to it, really listen, the scene comes alive. You hear the energy of the night, the voices of the characters, the movement of events. You don't just learn grammar, you feel the story, and that feeling makes the words stay with you. That feeling makes the lesson unforgettable. Listening is not passive, it is active. It demands effort. It demands presence. You cannot be half in and half out. You cannot listen while your mind is wandering through tomorrow's worries. To listen is to give yourself fully to the moment. And when you do, the reward is greater than you imagine. You begin to see patterns. You begin to catch meaning. You begin to connect the dots that others miss. Listening unlocks doors that remain closed to those who only skim the surface. And isn't that what life itself teaches us? We miss so much when we fail to listen. We miss the cry of a friend who needs help. We miss the wisdom of an elder who has walked the road before us. We miss the quiet whisper of truth that could guide us to a better tomorrow. We think we know, but knowledge without listening is hollow. Understanding comes when the ears are open, when the heart is still, when the mind is willing to be taught. So I tell you again, listening is the gateway to understanding. It is the first step, the essential step, the step without which no other can stand. If you want to grow, if you want to learn, if you want to rise higher in both language and life, then train yourself to listen. Listen with focus, listen with purpose, listen not just with your ears, but with your whole heart, because when you truly hear, you begin to learn. Every story is more than words, it carries voices, emotions, and truth that shape us. Words alone can be flat on a page, lifeless symbols, empty sounds. But when those words are woven into a story, when they are carried by the breath of a voice and clothed with the power of emotion, they take on life. A story is not just information, it is an experience. It draws us in, makes us feel, and leaves something behind that changes us. That is why stories remain when facts are forgotten. That is why we remember the tale long after we've forgotten the lecture. Because stories are not simply told, they are lived. When you hear a story, you are not just collecting new vocabulary or grammar. You are stepping into another person's world. You are walking through their joys, their fears, their struggles, their hopes. You begin to feel what they feel, see what they see, carry what they carry. And in that moment, the language is no longer just a tool. It becomes a bridge. The story moves you across the gap between your life and theirs, and suddenly you are connected. That connection is where real learning happens. Think about the stories that have stayed with you. Perhaps it was a tale your grandmother told you on a quiet evening, or a story you heard as a child that made you laugh until you cried. Those stories live on inside you because they carried more than words. They carried the voice of someone you loved. They carried the warmth of a moment that shaped you. They carried truth wrapped in emotion. And every time you remember them, you don't just remember the words. You remember the feeling. So it is with every story you hear in English. You might sit down to practice listening, but if you open your heart to the story, you will gain more than language. You will gain understanding, you will gain perspective, you will gain insight into the human experience. A night out at Maxim's is not simply a series of sentences to practice. It is a window into characters, into choices, into the human spirit. And as you listen, you find yourself not just learning how to pronounce, but learning how to feel. A story carries voices. The voice of a character can reveal their heart before they ever tell you who they are. A tone can carry anger, joy, fear, or love without a single word explaining it. When you listen closely, you begin to hear the truth behind the words. That is what makes listening so powerful. It trains you not only to hear, but to understand what lies beneath. A story carries emotions. Emotion is the lifeblood of a story. Without it, the words fall flat. But when a story carries laughter, tension, sorrow, or delight, it becomes unforgettable. It shapes the way you remember it, and it shapes the way you carry it forward. And when you listen in English, those emotions begin to anchor the language inside you. You remember because you felt it. You repeat because it touched you. A story carries truth. Not always the truth of facts, but the deeper truth of life. Stories reveal lessons, sometimes hidden in the details, sometimes shining through in a moment of choice or consequence. The truth of human nature, the truth of kindness, the truth of mistakes, the truth of courage, all of it comes alive in story. And when you hear it, something inside you shifts. You recognize yourself in the story. You see your own journey reflected back, and you walk away with more than you had before. This is why learning through story is so powerful. Because the human heart was made for story. We were not created to live by data and numbers alone. We were created to live by meaning, by connection, by the kind of truth that can only be carried in story. And when we open ourselves to that, when we listen not just for words, but for the voices, emotions, and truth beneath them, we are changed, we are shaped. So do not underestimate the story. Do not dismiss it as simple entertainment or a lesson to pass the time. Every story you hear has the power to mold your mind, to shape your heart, to strengthen your spirit. Every story is more than words. It is a living voice. It is a well of emotion. It is a bearer of truth. And if you let it, it will shape you too. Growth comes step by step, chapter by chapter. Lesson by lesson, we rise higher. Nobody reaches the top of a mountain in a single leap. Nobody learns a language, gains wisdom, or builds character in one grand moment. Growth is slow, growth is steady, growth is patient, and yet that is the very beauty of it, for every step taken, no matter how small, brings us closer to the summit. Every chapter turned, every lesson learned, adds another stone to the foundation of who we are becoming. We live in a world that craves instant results. People want quick answers, fast progress, immediate rewards, but life does not work that way. Real growth is not microwaved, it is cultivated. It is like a seed planted deep in the soil. The seed does not break the ground in a day. First, it must be watered. First, it must be warmed by the sun. First, it must push through the dark earth until at last a small green shoot appears, and from there, with time, with care, with patience, it grows into something strong and lasting. So it is with learning, with language, with life. You cannot expect to master English overnight. You cannot expect to understand every story, every word, every sentence the first time you hear it. But if you take it step by step, if you learn chapter by chapter, lesson by lesson, you will rise higher. You will look back one day and realize you have climbed farther than you thought possible. Take the story A Night Out at Maxim's. It is divided into chapters for a reason. Each chapter carries its own lesson, its own piece of the journey. You begin with the first chapter, and perhaps the words feel unfamiliar, the sentences feel heavy, the meaning feels distant. But as you listen, as you practice, as you move forward, you find yourself catching more. You find yourself connecting the pieces. By the time you reach the final chapter, you realize you are not the same listener you were at the beginning. You have grown, not all at once, but step by step. This is true not only in learning, but in living. Life itself is given to us in chapters. Childhood, youth, adulthood, old age, each chapter has its own lessons, its own joys, its own struggles, and we cannot skip ahead. We must walk through them one by one. Some chapters feel long, some feel short. Some are filled with laughter, others with tears, but each one matters, each one shapes us, each one lifts us a little higher if we let it. Growth also requires humility. Too often, we become impatient with ourselves. We look at how far we still have to go, and we grow discouraged. But humility reminds us that even the smallest step forward is progress. Even the smallest victory is worth celebrating. A new word learned, a new phrase understood, a new chapter completed. Each of these is a stone on the path upward, and without them the climb cannot be made. There will be moments when the journey feels slow, moments when you wonder if you are moving at all. But it is in those very moments that persistence matters most. Keep listening, keep practicing, keep turning the pages. For the step you take today, no matter how small, will make the step tomorrow easier. And in time, you will find yourself standing higher than you dreamed. Step by step, chapter by chapter, lesson by lesson, this is the rhythm of growth. And when you embrace it, you learn to trust the process. You learn to be patient with yourself. You learn that greatness is not found in rushing, but in steady faithfulness. The climb may be slow, but the summit is sure. So do not despise the small steps. Do not overlook the single chapter. Do not dismiss the single lesson. Each one is building you, shaping you, preparing you for more. Growth may not come in a flood, but it comes in a stream, steady and sure. And as long as you keep moving, as long as you keep rising, you will find yourself lifted to heights you never thought possible. Because growth comes step by step, chapter by chapter, lesson by lesson, we rise higher. Discipline in listening builds strength not only in language, but in life itself. Listening is not a passive act. It is not simply letting sounds reach your ears. True listening takes discipline. It takes effort. It takes a decision to quiet the noise around you, to set aside distractions, to silence your own thoughts long enough to truly hear. And when you practice that discipline, you discover something powerful. Listening not only improves your understanding of words, it shapes your character, it builds your strength, and it changes the way you live. We all know how easy it is to hear without really listening. A teacher speaks, but the student's mind wanders. A friend talks, but the other is too busy thinking of a reply. A story is told, but the listener only catches half of it because the phone buzzed, the television flickered, or the heart was far away. That kind of hearing does not build strength. It leaves us shallow, missing the deeper meaning. But disciplined listening, intentional, focused, purposeful listening, sharpens the mind and strengthens the soul. When you set yourself to listen to a story in English, you are training far more than your ears. You are training your focus, you are training your patience, you are training your ability to stay with something long enough to understand it. That discipline is not easy. At first, it feels hard. At first, your mind may wander. At first, you may grow restless. But every time you bring yourself back, every time you press in and refuse to give up, you are growing stronger. You are building endurance. You are laying hold of something greater than language alone. Consider how many people quit too soon. They begin with energy, but when it gets difficult, they turn away. They say the words are too fast, the meaning is too hard, the story is too long. But discipline does not quit. Discipline stays. Discipline leans in when others pull back. And because of that, discipline gains what others lose. In listening, just as in life, the one who endures, the one who refuses to let go, the one who stays faithful step after step, is the one who grows strong. And let me tell you, strength in listening goes beyond language. It reaches into the very heart of relationships. How many conflicts in life, how many broken friendships, how many wounded families could be healed if people truly listened? Not waiting for their turn to speak, not cutting in with their own opinion, but listening with discipline, hearing the heart, not just the words. That kind of listening brings healing. It builds trust. It creates bonds that last. When you practice disciplined listening and learning English, you are also preparing yourself for life. You are teaching yourself how to pay attention. You are teaching yourself how to value others. You are teaching yourself how to receive truth without rushing past it. And the more you train that discipline, the more it becomes part of you. It shows up in your studies, in your work, in your family, in your friendships. You find yourself calmer, more patient, more understanding, because you have trained yourself to listen. Listening requires humility too, because to listen, you must admit that you don't already know it all. You must be willing to be taught. You must accept that someone else has something worth saying, worth hearing, worth carrying in your heart, that humility is strength, not weakness. It takes strength to be still. It takes strength to open your mind. It takes strength to give your attention fully to another. And when you do, you gain more than words. You gain wisdom. So when you sit down to listen to a story like A Night Out at Maxim's, do it with discipline. Set aside your distractions. Focus your heart. Give your mind fully to the moment. Don't rush. Don't drift. Listen with intention. For every time you practice that discipline, you are not only building your language, you are building your life. And isn't that what we all long for? Not just to know more words, not just to pass another lesson, but to grow stronger as people, to build patience, understanding, wisdom, and endurance. All of that begins with something as simple and as difficult as disciplined listening. It may not seem like much in the moment, but over time it becomes a strength no one can take away. Because discipline in listening builds strength not only in language, but in life itself. The mind is sharpened by attention when we listen with focus. Wisdom enters the heart. Attention is one of the most precious gifts we can give, and yet it is the very thing that so many of us neglect. Our world is filled with distractions, phones buzzing, screens flashing, voices pulling us in every direction. We are taught to divide our minds, to multitask, to move quickly from one thing to another. But a divided mind is a dull mind. It is focus that sharpens us. It is attention that cuts through the noise. And when we learn to listen with focus, we find that wisdom slips quietly into the heart. Think of a craftsman with a blade. If he leaves it unattended, the edge grows dull. It cannot cut, it cannot carve, it cannot serve its purpose. But when he takes time to sharpen it, to give it careful attention, suddenly it is ready for the task. So it is with the mind. Left scattered and unfocused, it loses its edge. But when trained by attention, when disciplined by focus, the mind becomes sharp, able to cut through confusion, able to grasp meaning, able to hold on to truth. This is why listening matters. Listening is not just about hearing words, it is about giving attention to them. When you listen to a story, when you lean in with focus, something happens inside you. The meaning begins to take root. The emotions of the characters, the lessons of the moment, the truth hidden in the dialogue, it all sinks deeper than the surface. Without focus, the words pass by like the wind. But with focus, they enter the mind and settle into the heart. That is where wisdom is born. When you practice listening to English with attention, you are sharpening your mind in two ways. You are sharpening your understanding of the language, catching sounds, noticing rhythms, learning expressions. But you are also sharpening your ability to concentrate. And concentration is a skill that will serve you everywhere. In your studies, in your work, in your relationships, in your life. Attention is a form of respect, and when you give it fully, you not only learn more, you also honor the moment. Consider how many people miss wisdom simply because they were not paying attention. A teacher speaks, and the student's mind drifts. A parent gives advice, but the child is too distracted to hear. A story unfolds, but the listener only half engages, and so the meaning is lost. How many treasures are missed, how many truths slip away, because attention was not given. But when the mind is sharpened by attention, wisdom does not pass by. It enters, it remains, it shapes. When you listen to a story like A Night Out at Maxim's, you may think you are only practicing your English. But if you listen with true focus, you will find more. You will discover lessons about human nature, about choices and consequences, about joy and sorrow. You will notice the tone of voice, the rise and fall of emotion, the weight carried in silence. These are the kinds of lessons that cannot be found by skimming or rushing. They are only discovered by paying attention. Attention is also an act of love. When you give someone your focus, you are saying, "You matter, your words matter, this moment matters." That kind of listening builds relationships, builds trust, builds understanding, and it also builds you. Because every time you practice attention, you sharpen your ability to learn, to remember, to carry wisdom forward. The heart longs for wisdom. The mind longs for clarity, and the doorway to both is attention. When you sit quietly and listen, when you silence the noise around you and the noise within you, you create space for wisdom to enter. You allow truth to take root, you let the story shape you, you let the lesson grow in you, and over time that steady sharpening makes you stronger, wiser, more discerning. So let us not treat listening as something light, something small. It is one of the most powerful disciplines we can cultivate. When we give attention, our minds grow sharper, and when our minds are sharp, our hearts are ready to receive wisdom. And wisdom, once planted, becomes the guiding light for our journey. Because the mind is sharpened by attention when we listen with focus, wisdom enters the heart. Stories are bridges, they connect our world to another, teaching us both language and life. A story has the power to take us by the hand and lead us across the gap between what we know and what we have yet to understand. It lifts us out of the narrow walls of our own experience and sets us down in a place we've never walked before. And as we journey across that bridge, something remarkable happens. We not only learn new words, new phrases, new expressions, but we also learn new truths about what it means to be human. Think about it. You may never set foot in Paris or London or New York. You may never live through the exact struggles of a young man or woman in another country. But when you hear their story, when you walk across that bridge, for a moment you stand in their shoes. You see what they see, you feel what they feel, you learn not only their language but their life. That is the gift of story. It is not a lecture, it is not a set of rules, it is a bridge to understanding. When you listen to a story in English, you are doing more than practicing grammar or memorizing vocabulary. You are stepping into another world, one built with laughter, with tears, with conflict and resolution, with choices and consequences. And in that world, you are safe to learn. You can make mistakes without fear. You can pause, reflect, and return again. Each time you cross the bridge, you carry back something new, an expression, a truth, a deeper understanding of people and life. Take a night out at Maxim's. On the surface, it may seem like a simple tale, but listen carefully, and you will find it is more than words. It is a bridge to a time, a place, and a set of characters that reveal something about human behavior, about relationships, about the choices people make when life places them at a crossroads. By walking across that bridge, you are not just hearing a story. You are gathering wisdom. You are practicing patience. You are learning how language and life weave together. Stories remind us that we are not alone. They connect us across generations, across cultures, across languages. The struggles of one become the lessons of another. The joy of one becomes the hope of another. Stories take the distant and bring it near. They take the foreign and make it familiar. They take what was once strange and turn it into a friend. That is why stories endure. Long after the details of a lesson fade, long after the rules of grammar slip away, the story remains. Because the story is not only a bridge to knowledge, it is a bridge to the heart. And here lies the deeper truth. When you learn English through story, you are not just preparing yourself to pass an exam or to speak a few sentences. You are preparing yourself to cross bridges in life, bridges that will allow you to understand people who are different from you, bridges that will open doors of opportunity, bridges that will teach you to look beyond yourself and into the lives of others. This is what makes story so powerful. It builds connections, it creates understanding, it carries wisdom across the waters of separation and brings it to our own shore. But crossing a bridge requires courage. You must be willing to leave the ground you know and step onto something new. Some hesitate, some fear the journey. They say the words are too hard, the meaning is too hidden, the path is too long. But those who trust the bridge, those who take one step and then another, discover the treasure waiting on the other side. And when they return, they are not the same. They carry something greater within them. Every time you listen to a story, you are practicing the art of crossing bridges. You are learning to be patient. You are learning to pay attention. You are learning to find truth hidden in another's journey. And slowly, without realizing it, you are becoming stronger, wiser, more compassionate. The bridge is shaping you, so let us not take stories lightly. They are not only entertainment, not only practice material, not only words on a page. They are bridges, bridges of language, bridges of culture, bridges of wisdom, bridges of life. And if you are willing to cross them, you will find yourself connected to a greater world, carrying lessons that will guide you both in learning and in living. Because stories are bridges, they connect our world to another, teaching us both language and life. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. If these words have inspired you to listen more deeply and grow step by step, I invite you to stay connected. Every story is a bridge, every lesson a gift, and together we rise higher. So keep sharpening your mind, keep building strength, and let wisdom enter your heart. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today.